Welcome to the Created Worthy podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Damrell, and I am so grateful that you're here. On this show, I talk about creative processing and how to utilize it as a skill to bring peace, joy, and freedom into our chaotic lives. I also sit down with the most incredible guests as they share their stories, many of which for the very first time. We are all created worthy. Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. I am so excited to kick off season 2 with you today. And before we get started with our first incredible guest interview, I just want to take a moment to reintroduce myself. If this is the first episode that you're listening to, welcome. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Danielle Damrell, and I am an author, artist, creative director, God-fearing wife, and mom. I am still getting the hang of this whole podcasting thing, but speaking has always been something that I felt called towards. So being here on this show, creating this podcast is one of my favorite and greatest passion projects. I wear a lot of hats and make mistakes every single day. So my biggest goal during this season of life and on this podcast is just to show up as who I am. I own my mistakes and encourage others to find joy in the midst of the chaotic lives we all experience in different ways each and every day. I am so blessed to have... Okay. I am getting a call from LA, and anytime I've gotten a call from there, it's always something weird. So I guess I have to take this real quick. 1 second. Hello?
Hello?
Wait, is this Dr. Phil? Oh my gosh. I definitely wasn't expecting a call from you today.
How's it going?
Good, I guess. I'm a little in shock right now because I never thought I would get a call directly from you. So, how are you? What's going on?
So, we had a very interesting time when you were here, and your mother, well, she had a hard time hearing some things, to be sure. But I'm more interested in you. So, what's been the biggest change for you since we saw you last?
So, I guess right after the show, sorry, I wasn't expecting to talk about this right now, but I was actually presented with an opportunity to apply for the scholarship to be part of like a mastermind type group. And in my scholarship application, I wrote out a little bit of like my story, including the fact that I had just recently been on your show. And my scholarship application ended with something along the lines of like, I've learned that the chaos of life will likely never let up. And it was up to me to figure out how to find joy in the midst of chaos. So anyways, I know this is a long story. I'm kind of rambling, but I got that scholarship, and that led me to like starting this podcast, which crazy enough, I'm recording right now the intro or the like coming back for season 2. And so it's just kind of crazy that you called right now. But yeah, so I started this podcast that's really focused on helping people of like all backgrounds and experiences to just have a place to come and share their stories and remind others of like our inherent worthiness. That's why it's called, you know, Created Worthy.
Good.
So yeah, it is good. And it also opened doors for me to work on building my business. And in December, actually, I just landed a new job as a creative director of this company that serves doctors and clinicians and just teaches them how to build their own businesses to help people find like real healing, you know, deep-rooted healing. So actually with that, most recently, I was able to help edit and ghostwrite and co-author a new book that already hit bestseller in 4 different categories.
There's not a thing wrong with what you just said, and God bless you for claiming that right.
Thank you. Honestly, I've just come to accept that I really gave it my all. I did everything I possibly could have done. And after the show, I just realized that it was time for me to surrender, like not give up, but surrender my hopes and my expectations for specifically that relationship. But I just have really began to accept the outcome. And this propelled me into a season of freedom and healing that I had so desperately wanted for so long.
What you just said is articulate, it is intelligent, and it is logical.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm still very much in shock right now, but I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. And it really has given me the confidence to continue walking forward and sharing my truth. And I just feel like I've done everything I can do,
We've done everything we can do. Go and be well. And I'm going to do the same thing.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you so much for your call, Dr. Phil. I hope you have a great day.
Gotta run.
Okay. Bye. Wow. I just had to take a breather for a second, but I don't even know what to say. I guess I'm just glad I kept it recording. This is so weird. Okay, honestly, I think I just need some time to process what just happened. So let's just jump into the actual season opener. I hope that this episode blesses you as much as it really did bless me. So enjoy. Today, I am joined by Mandy Adendorf, who is an international artist, author, and mother to many. Her passion is to empower and release people into their dreams and callings. Creating is like breathing to Mandy. Whether it's painting on a canvas or making a mark on the human soul, her joy is to bring unseen possibilities into the world. Mandy is the founder of Firehouse Schools in Connecticut, and Mandy and her husband Stuart immigrated from South Africa to the United States in 1998 and settled in Connecticut, where Mandy's ministry and art studio are based. They have 2 beautiful grown daughters who themselves are history makers. Mandy, thank you so much for joining me today on the Created Worthy podcast. It is such an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I'm so excited to be on.
Just to start, do you want to just start telling me a little bit of your story and testimony? Whatever God has put on your heart, for sure.
Sure thing. Well, to start off, I will say that I'm from South Africa. I've been living in the States for about 21 years. The accent, everyone asks me about the accent, so just wanted to throw that out there at the beginning. But I actually grew up in a city called Johannesburg, and while I was growing up, I grew up during the apartheid years in South Africa.
I just had to jump in here and explain this a little bit more because what she just said about apartheid is a big deal. If you're like me and maybe you've heard of the apartheid years in South Africa, but never actually understood what they consist of, please let me explain. The apartheid era refers to the time that the National Party led the country's white minority in South Africa from 1948 to 1944. Apartheid literally means separation. As Americans, we are familiar with the segregation and slavery that occurred early on in our country's history and continues to obviously have its repercussions today. South Africa, however, went through their own era in which racial injustice plagued the country and strict laws were enforced that made the minority white race legally superior. The segregation of the Black majority was painfully clear as they were banned from living, doing business, or owning land in what was considered to be white areas only, aka cities, neighborhoods with actual houses. They were forced to use separate public facilities, transportation, and schools. Interracial marriage was banned, and many were denied the God-given right to citizenship, and they were forced to live in these weird, informal houses in small townships all throughout the country. The unjust treatment of the Black majority naturally caused residents to grow resistant, and peaceful protests actually were met with mass killings. It took many, many years, but eventually a gradual reform began to take place. This actually led ex-prisoner Nelson Mandela, who you've probably heard of, and also spent 27 years in a violent prison that he never should have been in the first place, to take seat as South Africa's first Black president, which was a result of a real democratic election. All this to say, this was Mandy's home. So let's jump back in and hear her firsthand experience living through this.
And actually lived through the transfer of power to Nelson Mandela, who was an amazing president, and got to be part of that whole experience, really, of seeing some justice in the nation. And it was quite a milestone in my life, having to walk through that, but also having to walk through some of the pain associated with living in South Africa.
Right.
And so just part of my story, really, in a nutshell, is that I was not a believer in Jesus growing up. I am Jewish, and Jesus was not anything that we ever talked about in a positive way. And but I was a seeker, I was a seeker because I really wanted to know if there was a God. And I did believe in a God for some of my young years, but wasn't always sure if he really was God. And then, but one of the things I have to tell you is I have struggled with fear. When, as a child, I had so much fear, specifically growing up in a very dangerous city. And I remember praying, even when I wasn't sure if I believed in God, for protection, because I was very afraid, like, to go to sleep at night. I was afraid of many things. And one of those nights, I was about 15 years old. I was praying to a God I didn't know existed. But in my prayer, I said a word that I'd never said in prayer before, and that was Jesus. Like, I said Jesus. For me, saying Jesus was very scary because I was saying that in prayer. It was not a curse word. It was something I'd never done before. And in that moment, I experienced his presence that I had never experienced before. Yeah, there was a lot to that whole transition, but that's basically where it all began. So, and my journey just,
Yeah.
changed.
So when you decided to move from South Africa, was there a specific reason why that moment was important for you guys to move? Because at that time you had 2 daughters, right?
Yes.
Both your daughters were born.
Yes. So Danielle, that's a good question. And I don't have a fantastic answer, not a spiritual answer, I should say. My husband came to me one day and he said to me, Mandy, I'd like to enter the green card lottery. And I was like, what is the green card lottery? And he said, well, it's a contest. It's actually like a lottery system. You don't actually have to pay to be part of it. Put your name in a lottery system with the US government. And there is a very slight chance, but if they pick our name, we get to come to America and have a green card. And so I said, no, please don't do that. So I didn't want to leave. I grew up in a small home. Africa was the only place I knew. I loved living where I lived, even though it was dangerous. And I didn't want to leave my family. But anyway, he convinced me. And so I finally said yes. And I thought, the chances that I'd actually ever win this thing are so slim that, yeah, go for it, enter this lottery thing.
Yes.
So anyway, we won it.
There's the God moment in that.
No, there's a huge God moment. It just wasn't with me. It wasn't with my choice. He just did it sovereignly. So, yeah.
That's so amazing. So when you moved here, what were you guys doing?
My husband was working for a big corporation, and actually it was such a miracle because the exchange rate to move from South Africa to America was impossible. If you were South African, our currency was so low by the time you got to America. And so we knew we needed a miracle. And so he had actually asked his boss in the corporation that he worked in if it was possible to give him a transfer, because they did have a company in the States. And that actually came through. And that was such an incredible, there were a lot of other little things that led up to that, but it was miraculous that we were able to come on the company. The company actually helped us to get here. So that was huge for us. And so he was doing that and I was doing ministry and arts. And yep, that's what we did.
So have you always been an artist, like from the time you were young?
Yes, I have. My father's been an artist ever since, my father, his mother. And so from the time I was little, I was drawing, painting.
Yes.
Anything.
So tell me a little bit about your ministry. I know that you founded the Firehouse Schools in Connecticut. What is that?
So the Firehouse Schools are a group of schools. We actually are the Firehouse School of Supernatural Ministry is the long name, but we have a bunch of different outlets for that. So last year we had a creativity school and then a ministry school. And this year we have an online ministry school and an on-campus one. And basically what it is training believers to really walk in their full identity as children of God, you know, whether that means just knowing who we are or knowing that God still does miracles and how do we pray for people that need a miracle. And you know, basically that's what we teach people for about 8 months.
Wow, that is so amazing. I have followed you on Instagram and have seen kind of, did you just recently start the Firehouse Schools in the last few years?
Yes, 6 years ago.
Okay, I was gonna say, I feel like we may have been friends on Facebook or something when you started it, and I just
Oh,
remember reading about it and seeing just God shine
oh,
through it and being like so intrigued by the supernatural ministry. I know out here in Colorado, sometimes it feels like it's dead, like spiritually dead, and
okay.
almost the supernatural part of ministry is like hands off. Like people are like, I'm not going there. I don't know what that is. I don't know about speaking in tongues or anything like that. So, my question to you would be what specifically with the supernatural ministry? Like, what do you guys focus on?
You know, it's so interesting that you asked that, Danielle, because everybody, when we say supernatural ministry, it's like, oh, do you walk through walls? Like, what do you do? And really, it is actually so simple. It's simple Christianity at its basic, which is, first of all, really training believers. I know this sounds so simple, but training us in our sonship, understanding like if we are a Christian, we believe in Jesus, we are a son or a daughter of God,
Mm,
which makes us inheritors. We inherit everything that all of the graces of God on earth. That means that we get to use the authority of God as believers on earth. So if we come across someone that's sick, we can pray for them because we're sons and daughters. So we're teaching things that everyone kind of learns at church, but we're kind of challenging and stretching folks to, okay, if this is what we read in the Bible and we believe it in our head, how do we live it? Can we actually, do it? And so we practice, we go out, we do ministry, we pray on it for each other. We've seen so many wonderful things that God has done in the school through the students. So basically, that's it. So we're actually training people to understand their sons and daughters. And from there, from that platform, what does it look like to actually live in that authority?
oh my goodness. That is such a necessary skill, really, to learn because it takes a lot of introspection and humility, really, to be like, I need a savior. And also, I'm going to let that king reign through me and
Yes.
affect the lives of the people around me.
Yes.
And yeah, thank you for doing that for our world and for the other believers. Is
Uh,
there a way for people who are not in Connecticut to be involved in that ministry?
yes. So we do have the online school, and they can find that at ourfirehouse.com. But we only do intake in the summers. So we start every year in September. We run through like a college year of September through the end of April.
Okay, so back to your art. What are your favorite ways to create?
My favorite ways change, but right now I really love combining oils and acrylics like a mixed media on canvas with some metallic gold leafing, silver leafing. And I have just begun to dabble in 24 karat gold, which is scary
Wow.
because it's an expensive thing for an artist to be playing around with.
Yeah. So how do they even sell that? Because I know with gold leaf, it's like a paper, not a paper, but like a thin piece of gold. Is real gold like that too?
Yep, it is. It's pretty much the
Really?
same, but it's real. Yeah, it is scary. And that's one of the biggest challenges as an artist is breaking fear because it's so hard to
Sure.
create when there's fear in the way. So, you just have to just kind of count it as a loss. Well, if this is a mess, then it's goodbye to that
Right.
gold.
For sure. I know I have this, I worked with gold leaf a little bit. Not real gold leaf though, metal gold leaf. And it was so messy. Like there was gold flakes all over our house for months and months. Like I think that there's still some stuck to our floor currently. And just for our listeners to know, honestly, you guys, you have to go follow her because she is next level artist. Like her art is incredible. Every time I see it, it cuts me to my soul immediately. I'm like, oh my gosh, there is so much power behind your paintings.
Thank you.
And I just love it so much. I have this one that will forever stick in my mind. I believe it's of Lindy, your daughter. She's holding a lantern, I think.
Yes, yes.
Is there
That's
a story behind that one?
Yes, well, actually, that was quite a few years ago. I wanted to do portraits of my children, but I wanted to do what I call prophetic portraits, which is I didn't just want their face smiling or whatever, or them in a pretty dress. I really wanted to depict something that was inside of them, that a gift that they had, something that God had planted in them. So for Lindy's one, for that one, she is someone who literally loves to go into dark places and bring the light. She's fearless. And so in that painting, that's why I did her with, she's in a beautiful silver ball gown with a lantern, and the reflection of the light from the lantern is actually hitting her heart, kind of showing like that it's like her heart reflecting, and everything around her is dark in the portrait for those listening. So it for us, it speaks to us. It's hanging in our home. So, and one day when she wants it, she can have it. Right now, she doesn't want to.
She's still moving around, spreading her light in all different places.
You're right. She's shining that lantern in some places, and that's what she's doing.
Yes. Did you do one of Jenna as well?
I did. And for Jenna, hers was called Devotion because she's so faithful and devoted. That's one of the gifts she has. So for her, I just had her holding a rose really gently, and it just portrayed her expression, and everything just portrayed being very content to just be and not to even be seen, and just to be completely devoted to just being who God made her to be and in his presence.
I love that. And I love hearing your heart behind it, because I don't know if you know this, but I have a 6-year-old daughter who I actually got pregnant with when I was a sophomore at CCU.
Okay.
So Lindy and Sarah actually were with me through that whole pregnancy.
I
We were
remember that.
really good friends, and they were a huge part of why I continued to stay at CCU. That was a really uncomfortable thing to go through.
Wow.
I got pregnant in September, was due in June, and went to school on campus that entire time. And I don't think I could have done it without their friendship. And I think, did Jenna start at CCU the year after Lindy?
Yes.
So then Jenna was there too. So yeah, because I definitely have spent some time with Jenna as well.
Oh
But
my
getting
goodness.
to know your girls has been a highlight of my life, and specifically of my college life in that season. And being a mom myself, seeing the ways that you saw in a really beautiful and unique artistic way their qualities, and then was able to produce a painting that reflected that, is really inspiring for me, because being a mom is really hard. And my daughter's only 6, so I am not entirely sure what her personality will turn out to be, but I do see qualities that are amazing, but I also get blinded just by the tantrums or the things that are, she's not putting her socks on quick enough or whatever. And so I just get caught up in that, where I struggle to see the good. And so just hearing you explain these paintings that you made of your girls is really reminds me that I need to look deeper into my own daughter and appreciate and value the sweet, sweet spirit that she does have. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your girls with me and that story.
That is so beautiful, Danielle. I didn't realize, I did know they walked with you, but I didn't realize how impactful that was. And that is very precious. And just enjoy your beautiful girl now. It's funny, I was in the store today and I came across a little toy. I saw a little toy with the cutest little eyes. It was like a little dog. And I remember Lindy had said to me it was like, I remember her liking that kind of toy when she was a baby. And I remember not buying it for or something. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, I wish I would have like seen the sweetness more. It's so funny how you always wish you would have seen more in retrospect. And so I always just say, you just got to be so intentional. You got to try. It's hard. It's hard when they're young.
Yes. Yes, for sure. They are still little people, and these are foundational years. Like how we respond and react to her and her tantrums, the good times and the bad times, is going to help paint the picture of how the rest of her life will be, and how she'll respond to conflict, and how she'll be able to make an impact in this world, hopefully, which I believe she will. I want her to be a history maker as well. Of course.
Oh, that's so wonderful. She absolutely will, Danielle.
Talking about motherhood, in your bio, mother to many is what you wrote. And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I've been saying since I was a little girl, was that I wanted to be a mother to many. And I don't know if you know what's been going on in my story at all, but we're walking through infertility, my husband and I, and we just went through our very first failed IUI cycle, so infertility cycle. And we've been going through this for like 2.5 years at this point. And God, after this last fail, IUI fail, I felt like God was saying, if I do not give you what you think you need, will you still have faith in me? Will you still serve me? Not that I felt like he was saying, no, you're not going to have any more kids, but I did have to start contemplating, like, what do I do if he knows that that's not what I need? But I do feel like he's planted this desire deep in my heart from the time I was little to be a mother to many. I would love to hear why that's something that you put in the very first line of your title.
Thank you for sharing your story. That's got to be difficult, especially if you have a heart to be a mother to many. I never really wanted to have tons of my own children because I loved being a mother so much when they were little. I loved that, but it definitely was difficult for me. I was not one of those people who had the one child on my hip and the other one like spitting on my finger. It was challenging, but I loved them so much, and it was the most wonderful thing. But I did not want to have many. But one of the things that I've always been passionate about are just people. And I think everybody can be mothers to anyone that can receive from us. So it can look like, for me, I don't know why, I just tend to have a lot of young men that maybe didn't have good homes, that the Lord always puts me with those type of young men, and I get to be a mother to them. It just happens organically as I just go upon my life. And I think what it is I think we attract the people that we have compassion for or are drawn to. And it's kind of like a work in progress. And I think with anyone listening to this, and with you as well, Danielle, as you just be yourself, like the Lord will attract the right people to you, and you won't intentionally know you're being a mother until one day you realize, oh my goodness, like I'm actually like a mother to this person, and then you find more and more people. It's one of those things that I think we all call to that, mothers and fathers,
Right. No, I love hearing that. And it brought up for me the fact that even just within my core friend group, they call me the mom of the group.
Do they?
Yes. And there are lots of people, I call them God messages because they always come at the most perfect time. I get messages quite often, probably 2 to 3 times a week, from people that I haven't talked to in years. Maybe I was in treatment with when I was a teenager, or just met them at random different times in my life, and they reach out to me on social media and just tell me what they're walking through and ask me to pray for them and be there for them. And I'm like, that is such a blessing. And those, I think, are the ways that God is still, fulfilling that desire.
You're being a mother to those people. Of course, it's difficult to know that because you're peers, but that is what you're doing,
Right. And I just pray that as I get older and gain even more experiences and am able to make more authentic connections, that I really can serve people who have had hard relationships with their mom, because I personally have had a really hard relationship with my mom. And we do not have a mother-daughter relationship. We never have. And that has always been a super deep desire of mine as well. So not only did I want to have a lot of children, but I also wanted a mom. Like my whole life, my whole younger life, I spent looking for attention from women, teachers, whoever was in my life who could love me like a mom would love me. And when I became a mom, I realized that I was probably not going to have that. Like God was not going to just give me a new mom. That's not how he was working in my life, but he was preparing me to be the mom that I needed so that I can do that for my daughter, and then hopefully for any future children or people in my life who need that.
That's really special.
Thank you. One more thing about creating. I talk in my first episode of my first season about creative processing, which is kind of this idea that creating in itself is a processing method. So for me, I found that over the last 4 years of owning my own art and creative business, I've used a lot of different art forms for different things. So watercolor, is very specific and it's beautiful, and the water is the thing that makes it beautiful, and it takes time and layering and all of that. So for me, I always paired that with like a deep creative processing season where I was walking through something dark or deep and I needed just to be able to create something deep. Do you feel like creating is a processing method for you?
Absolutely. That's such a great way of putting it. It is absolutely. That is probably one of the main reasons I create. I love to actually create a beautiful product at the end, but it's the process that I need and love
Right.
so much. And for me, the processing, honestly, it's like a cleansing. It feels like a
Yeah.
cleansing of my mind, my soul, my spirit. I can feel God when I'm doing it really well. I can hear his voice really clearly. I know how healthy it is because my husband has been known to say to me, Mandy, when was the last time you were in the studio? If he knows I'm just a little fried and cranky, he knows, he can feel that I'm not getting that. And so I know I should be in the studio every week. For everything in me to work well and for me to be my best person, I need to be spending a day every week, just me, the Lord, and my paint.
Yes. So another thing I talk about in this episode is setting the scene for creative processing and creating an environment that is conducive to doing that processing. So for instance, if you're trying to do it with kids running around, it's super loud, you don't have any space, it can still be maybe a little bit helpful, but you're not really able to get into those deeper places, at least from the experience I've had with it. You talked about your studio. Do you feel like having a set space or setting the tone in that environment also helps you to be able to process better or connect with God?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, I talk about this in two of my books because I so believe in it that having a studio or a space is absolutely vital to give you just emotional space, physical space,
Intentional.
intentional, having the sounds, the smells, all those things. But I will, just in answering your question, I will say that I didn't always have a studio and I've been
Right.
painting all my life. When I was a young mother, just interestingly that you're a young mother, Danielle, but when I was a young mother, I still needed to paint, but I didn't have the space to paint. We lived in a small home. We didn't have a studio, no extra room for that. Plus, paints are toxic and all those things. And so what I found and asked my family if I could do, really it was my husband, he was fine with me doing it, was I used part of the dining room table. Literally a
Yes.
little piece of that dining room table I set up and I very seldom took it down because the problem was with a mom to set up and take down is a whole mission. So I like to have a little space, even just a tiny space somewhere where I knew my paint stuff was there. That really helped me get through seasons where I didn't have a studio because then I still felt like I had my little space. And if the
Right.
kids were napping or something that was quiet, I could run over to the table and create something.
Can you share with us your current favorite podcast, book, and song?
Currently, my favorite podcast, I have a couple of favorites. I love podcasts. I am loving Boundaries by Henry Townsend.
I've never
It
heard of that.
is, it, I have referred so many people to that podcast. It is so powerful and it really is about emotional health because I have such an interest in emotional health and I work with a lot of people, even though I'm not a therapist. I'm a pastor, so it's part of what I do.
Right.
This is the most phenomenal podcast. And so part of it is he shares something as a doctor about emotional health. And then he actually has people who call in with questions and problems with relationships. Generally, it's relationship. It's so good. It's phenomenal. So that's my favorite podcast.
Yes, I'm going to have to listen to that because I
Oh,
am super into mental and emotional health.
you're going to love it because he is a brilliant doctor and he's also a believer in
Oh,
Jesus.
wow.
So he combines his faith with his medical understanding. It's phenomenal.
Did he write the book Boundaries?
He absolutely did.
Okay, so I have read that
Yes.
book.
This
I'm
is a
checking
whole
it out.
nother dimension to that book. It's incredible. So that's my favorite podcast. My favorite book has to be The Supernatural Ways of Royalty by Chris Ballatin. I love reading, but that book is something that I love so much, and I also tell everyone in the whole world to read it. The Supernatural Ways of Royalty, and really what it is, it's once again it's the healing of the emotions because I so love that, but it's the healing of the heart of a son or daughter of God and understanding what it really means to be a son or daughter of God. It's phenomenal. And understanding that we are royalty and how to walk as royal people in this world. It's beautiful.
Oh, I love that. Another one I'm going to have to check out. What about song?
I think my favorite song right now has got to be, I mean, it's a song that's just such a normal song. It's Waymaker. Have you heard of Waymaker by
Oh,
Better Music?
yes. I was listening to it right before we recorded. So, how crazy. It's an
Oh my goodness.
incredible song.
Yes, I love it.
Do you have any exciting announcements or projects that you're working on currently?
I do. I have a bunch. So first
Yay,
of all,
share.
I just started a podcast a few weeks ago, which I'm very excited about. It's called Uncommon Wisdom Weekly. And every week I share some pearls of wisdom. Usually I use something from the words of Jesus or from the Bible, and I just expound, but it's not a Bible study. It is really 15 minutes about living life. And what does it look like to have an answer from heaven? What does it look like to have wisdom from heaven in a very normal, real life problem? And so I address a lot of different problems and some wisdom from heaven. It's really fun. I love doing it. So that's my first announcement.
Awesome. What else are you working on?
Well, I'm working on a book. I've written 3 books, and this is my 4th book. Yes. And
Wow.
the book that I finished in 2019, which was launched in 2019, is called Uncommon Wisdom for Pioneers and Other Brave Hearts. And that is actually a coffee table book with my art, and also with just messages for people who are pioneers, who start new things, and who are brave, and really encouragement. It's so good. I love that book. I will
Is
say
it like a devotional?
it's not like a devotional. It's something, honestly, it's like a coffee table book. So it's difficult to describe because each painting has maybe a 2 or 3 page story. So they're like short stories or short anecdotes. They really are very powerful. And when I was going through the edit, I remember going through the edit and afterwards thinking, wow, I am so encouraged by my own book. So
That's
I
how
thought,
you know it's good.
yes, I thought, wow, that is something that I really love. And it's because God used it to encourage me. So that was a book that I wrote in 2019. Now the second one is coming out. That's the new one, which is Uncommon Wisdom Volume 2. It's probably going to be released in summer next year. And I finished all the paintings. The paintings took me 3 years for that book to finish. They're all pictures of women in bridal attire or flowers, and Women of the Nations, and it's depicting the bride of Christ. And the book is all going to be about what does it look like to be the bride of Christ with all the paintings.
That I cannot wait to see that. Thank you for sharing about that. Is there anything else that you're working on right now?
Probably.
Those are 2 huge things. Podcast
Yeah.
and a book release, and you've been working on these paintings for 3 years.
Yes.
And you're doing the ministry. So you've already got a ton going on. Where can listeners find you and connect with you?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. My website is a great place, which is mandyadendorf.com. Email mandyadendorf@gmail.com, really easy. Facebook, Mandy Adendorf Studio. Instagram, Mandy Adendorf Studio. YouTube is, I think it's Beloved. I was trying to change it. If you just look up Mandy Adendorf, you'll find it. But YouTube's actually got a lot of great videos as well that I've made. Just really powerful encouragement videos. And then, of course, the podcast, Uncommon Wisdom Weekly.
Amazing. And all of those links will be in the show notes as well. So make sure to go check out all of Mandy's amazing pages and the things that she's up to. Grab her book, listen to her podcast. Mandy, thank you again so much for sitting here today and recording with me for Created Worthy.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And it's been such an honor to be on the show, just to talk with you. I think sometimes we don't realize what we got until we don't have it. So,
well, thank you, Mandy.
Thanks.
Oh, hey. By the way, before we actually close the show, April Fools. We may or may not have gotten you pretty good with that Dr. Phil call at the beginning now, didn't we? Maybe one day I'll actually be cool enough to have Dr. Phil call me directly, but maybe that's only reserved for people who have been on his show 3 times, because twice isn't enough yet. But maybe one day we'll get there. Anyway, my friend and editor, Morgan, helped me attempt this prank. So yeah, we actually combined some like random sound bites and clips from the update show I was on earlier this year to make this call possible. And honestly, it was way harder than it looked or sounded. Okay? Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode and got a good laugh from that ridiculous little prank. April Fools. Prank War Champion. I'll Venmo $1 to anyone who tells me what reference that's from. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Created Worthy podcast. If you want to connect more, you can follow along with me over at Danielle Damrell or Damrell Creative Co. on Instagram and Facebook. All the links to today's topics are in the show notes, and you can also find a link to my Patreon, which is where you can help support my mission on this show and keep it going. Ratings and reviews really do matter, so make sure to hook me up with 5-star review. Any less, I would rather hear your opinions over email. So anyway, if this episode resonated with you at all, share the love, send it to a friend, or post it on your social media. But don't forget to tag me so I see it and can share it too. I hope all of you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you on the flip side.